Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Genki 2 Lesson 13 live stream. We're finally starting Genki 2. It's been a year since we started covering Genki 1 here on ToKini Andy. Tonight we are going to be covering potential verb conjugation, multiple reasons with shi. It looks like something is happening with so des. Try to with te miru, using the te form, if it's with nara and frequency. And I'm also going to be covering something a little bit extra in a bonus section because Genki covers turning adjectives into adverbs in like a little side section, but it's actually pretty important, so I didn't want to skip it. So that's going to be a bonus section for tonight. So these are, of course, the color codes that we try to use throughout all of the lessons now. They will apply to anything up after lesson 10 from Genki 1. Anything before that, these will probably not apply, but everything moving forward will be using these color codes. And our first section for tonight is potential verb conjugation. So the potential form, what it really means is being able to do something or can do. So the potential form turns the verb into saying you can do that verb or you're able to do that verb. Before we get started with that though, I think you're going to need a crash course in Godan conjugation. Most of you who have been here from the beginning, you've got it down. But if you're new here, let's just go over it really quick. If you want a more detailed explanation of Godan conjugation, there'll be a link over here to a full video where I covered lots about Godan conjugation. The quick explanation is that all verbs in their dictionary form end in either u, tsu, mu, bu, nu, ku, gu, or su, and sometimes do. All verbs in their dictionary form. Now, verbs that end in idu or edu, the sound idu or edu, right? Not necessarily the character idu and edu, but the sound e followed by do or e followed by do. They're usually ichidan verbs, not godan verbs, and I'll cover those a little bit later, but first we're going to go into godan verbs. Now, godan refers to these 5 different ladders, like these 5 steps on a ladder of ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, or a, I, u, e, o. There's 5 vowel sounds in Japanese. They are a, I, u, e, o. And that's what godan means. Go is 5 steps. 5 steps, and the 5 steps are the 5 vowel sounds in the Japanese language. For example, for the verb aruku, which means to walk, you kind of move up and down this ladder to conjugate godan verbs. If you move up to here to ki, it's 1 stem of a conjugation. If you move down here to ke, it's another stem for a conjugation of a verb in Japanese. So the potential form of godan verbs goes to the e column, which is right here. So aruku moves down to the ke column, like this, and then you add do, and you have the potential form of any godan verb. So aruku, you move down to ke, and you add do, and you have arukeru, and this means can walk. It doesn't mean walk anymore. It means to be able to walk, can walk. There's a furigana for that. So the potential form, or can do, of ichidan verbs, now you remember ichidan verbs are verbs that end with the sound e followed by do, or the sound e followed by do, most of them. There's some exceptions to those. I'm not going to go over them tonight. If you'd like to look up the exceptions, check out the ichidan verb video. It'll be right over here. For ichidan verbs, all you have to do is drop the do, or cut it off, and then add da, de, do, dareru. Now there's a shorter version of this where you drop the do and add deru. Now if you look at that, you'll notice it's pretty much exactly the same as the godan conjugation, right? You can think of moving down to the a column, dadiru dedo, the de column is the de, and adding do, dedu. That's actually more common in conversation. In conversation in Japanese, generally we don't say da dedu. We say dedu when we're conjugating ichidan verbs into the potential form. Usually we use the dedu. But officially, in textbooks, even in Japan, this isn't accepted as grammatically correct. But in conversation, it's very, very common. In fact, more common than dareru. So keep that in mind. So here's an example. We've got miru, which is to look. So you've got the dictionary form. You drop the do. You're left with mi. And you add dareru. Midareru. That means can look or can see. But more common in conversation is just to drop the do and add deru. Mideru. Or just like a godan conjugation, right? That's more common in conversation. In fact, it's so much more common that I actually forgot about dareru when I made the ichidan video and had to delete it and re-upload a new version with the dareru because I haven't actually used the dareru in conversation in so long that I forgot about it. So you shouldn't forget about it because grammatically it's the dareru. But keep in mind that when you're out and about, if you ever come to Japan, you're going to be hearing deru for ichidan verbs much more often. Now, just like with all conjugations in Japanese, there's two irregular verbs, and they are suru and kuru. Suru is to do, kuru is to come. And they're conjugated a little bit differently for almost every single verb conjugation in Japanese. For suru, we've got dekiru. Suru becomes dekiru. It's like a whole different verb. It doesn't even make sense. And it is kind of a different word. And in fact, you can think of potential forms as kind of new words of being able to do something. But the be able to do for suru is dekiru. Kuru becomes kodareru. So not only is it dareru, but the ku changes to ko. Kodareru. So the ku here becomes ko dareru. But just like ichidan verbs, it's actually very common to say koreru instead of dareru. Very common to get rid of that. And the reason for that is in conversation, we usually say whatever's easier. Whatever's easier. In any language, people like to go the path of least resistance, and that's Japanese included. So we'll say things like koreru instead of korareru. So I wanted to talk a little bit about particles and the potential form. So verbs that take o, like for example, taberu, natto wo taberu, can continue to take o, they can stay with o, or sometimes they can be changed to ga. There's no rule for this. It's just that either one is okay. So for example, natto wo taberu becomes natto wo taberareru. Can eat natto. Or natto ga taberareru. Either one is fine. There's no real rule as to which one you should use. Just know that it can take either. It could also be natto wo tabereru. Remember, because you don't need that ra necessarily. All right. All other particles will stay exactly the same. So for example, ao, to meet, takes ni. It's not going to change in the potential form. Tomodachi ni ao, to meet a friend. Tomodachi ni aeru, can meet a friend. It stays ni. Dekiru, the verb dekiru, which is the potential form of suru, always takes ga. Almost always. Not 100% of the time, but 99.9% of the time, you're going to see o change to ga. So in situations like this, ryori o suru, to cook, will become ryori ga dekiru. You're going to change that o to ga pretty much every time. Just consider it a rule that you're going to change it to ga because you're better off that way. Because it can always be ga, and it almost always is. So ga. So that's particles. Particles are never fun, but keep that in mind. One other thing to talk about here is that potential verbs conjugate like ichidan verbs. So when you create a potential form verb by changing aruku, move down to the a column, so aruke and arukeru, you can now conjugate this further as if it were an ichidan verb. Because check it out. Keru, eru. It's an eru verb, right? Arukeru. So now you can conjugate that to say, I can't walk. Aruke nai. So you conjugate it just like an ichidan verb, which is usually just cut the ru, drop the ru, and add some other ending. So this is negative. Aruke nai, can't walk. Arukemas, can walk. That's the polite present, future, habitual tense. Aruketa, was able to walk, past tense. There's one other can do, like there's a construction, a grammatical construction that Genki covers, which also means can do, and it's also quite common. And it's a short form clause, so just a sentence basically that ends in a short form verb. And you can add plus koto ga dekiru. Koto ga dekiru. So remember, potential form was natto wo taberareru. Well, you could also say, this means the same thing, natto wo taberu koto ga dekiru. Now, obviously, this is longer. The potential form is going to be preferable in most situations. But this is a little bit more, I don't know, dramatic. It seems a little bit more emphasized. And it's okay. You can also do this. If you forget how to make the potential form, you can just use the present tense, the short dictionary form. Taberu koto ga dekiru. Koto ga dekiru. This is just another way to say the same thing. So let's go ahead and jump into our conversation piece for this week. We've got いい天気ですね。海に行きましょう。雲が見えないね。全然見えない。行きましょう。泳げないんだよ。大丈夫ですよ。見に行けるよ。見に行く？ Let's read that at full speed. いい天気ですね。海に行きましょう。雲が見えないね。全然見えない。行きましょう。泳げないんだよ。 大丈夫ですよ。見に行けるよ。見に行く? All right, let's go over the English translation and then we'll get to the question for today and answer any questions you might have. いい天気ですね。海に行きましょう. This means it's great weather, isn't it? いい天気. You're going to hear this all the time if it's nice out. People love to talk about the weather here just like they do in any other country in the world. いい天気ですね。海に行きましょう. Remember, this is the volitional, but it's like an invitation, like let's go do something. It's great weather, isn't it? ね. Let's go to the sea. 雲が見えないね. Yeah, you can't see any clouds. 全然見えない. 行きましょう. You can't see any. Let's go. 泳げないんだよ. I can't swim, you know. 泳げる would be the potential form of 泳ぐ, which is to swim. 泳ぐ, gu. Move down to the A column. 泳げる. Just cut the ru because it's an ichidan verb now. Add ない. 泳げない. I can't swim. 泳げない. 大丈夫ですよ. It's fine. You're fine. 見に行けるよ. 見に行けるよ. 見に行く means go and look or go and see. 行ける means can go. 行く move the ku down to the A column. 行け add る 行ける can go. 行けるよ. 見に行く go and look. By the way, in the Patreon, if you've already watched the listening and shadowing videos, you'll know that this A stands for Ando-san. So the question today for this section is 何が食べられませんか? 何が食べられませんか? What can you not eat? What are you not able to eat? This could be something that you literally have an allergy to or something you just don't like to eat and you're not able to eat it. You put it in and it just comes back out. So in Japanese, please use the potential form of eat. You can use the conversational form or the full grammatically correct form. 何が食べられませんか? ToKini Andy and Yuki in combination have created a merch store. There is ToKini Andy merch. It was all designed by Yuki. Well, the logos were designed by Yuki and we made the items together. We've got O Banana hoodies. O Banana. Notice this is the kanji for O, and that's a banana. I like the blue one. I actually ordered one of these. I'm supposed to be wearing it right now, but it didn't come yet. O Banana. ToKini Kazoku masks and ToKini Kazoku stickers. And what is this? Ando-san hoodies and t-shirts? Yes, and there's even a ToKini Kazoku pet hoodie. And ToKini Kazoku, for those of you who don't know, Walter Ditto, who I don't think is here right now, created the idea of ToKini Kazoku over in our Discord. There's a link to the Discord down below. If you're not in the Discord, you should be. It's a great community we've got going there. And this is the Ando-san face right here. There's actually a sticker for that here on YouTube for members. So drop that sticker in chat if you are a member. Masks, t-shirts, towels, cups, more t-shirts with O Banana, ToKini Kazoku main logo, and Ando-san faces. So please check that out. There's a link down in the description. Until October 31st, there's a 10% discount on all of these items, every single one. If you use the lesson 13, all caps, one word down in the description between now and October 31st, 10% discount for anyone. ToKini Andy has merch now. It's fun. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into multiple reasons with she. Multiple reasons with she. She is a very, very useful, I guess, particle. And basically the way you use it is you take a reason and add she, and then another reason and add she. So you can have two reasons for whatever the situation is, or for whatever you're doing, or for whatever's happening. Two reasons or more. As many as you want, honestly. Just by using she. So it's basically just like kara, but with kara, you only have one reason, right? You've got a reason plus kara, and then the situation. And that's it. You can only have one reason with that. But with she, you can use it just like kara and have multiple reasons. So before we get into some examples so I can help explain that more, the way you use it is you take a verb usually in the short form, but that's not a rule. It's usually short form plus she, and then the final situation verb determines the tense of the full sentence or the politeness of it. But in very polite conversation, people very, very commonly use polite forms followed by she. So Tabemasu shi, nomimasu shi. You will hear stuff like that. But it is more common, and technically the rule, to use short forms with shi of verbs. That's also true with e adjectives. Basically, it's just the e adjective on its own, followed by shi. But in very, very polite situations, you will hear people say, tanoshii desu shi. I've heard it. You hear it sometimes. Na adjectives take na adjective plus da plus shi. So for example, kirei da shi. Nouns also take da followed by shi. One thing to keep in mind is that the shi construction does not have to be in the same sentence as the situation. You can have the sentence, which is the situation, separate. For example, you could have the situation first, followed by a period or full stop, and then have reasons she, and the sentence ends like that. That's perfectly fine. We'll show you some examples in a little bit. I think the examples are the only way that this is all going to make sense. So here are some nice examples. We've got yasashii shi, kirei da shi, tsukiaitai. She's kind, pretty, and I want to date her. She's kind, pretty, and I want to date her. Yasashii shi, kirei da shi, tsukiaitai. Tsukiao means to date someone. It can also mean to hang out with someone, but usually it's used to mean date. Terebi wo miteiru shi. So there's short form teiru. That's perfectly fine. Shi. Isogashii. Now notice here that there's only one she. You usually have to have multiple reasons, right? Well, in this situation, it's sort of a very casual way of suggesting that you're busy, and one of the reasons, just one of them, is that you're watching TV. But using she instead of kara implies that that's not the only reason. There's more reasons that you're busy and you don't want to be bothered. But the only one you're willing to talk about right now, because you're so busy, is that you're watching TV. So leave me alone. So terebi o miteiru shi, isogashii. So a single she on its own implies that there are more reasons and you're only telling one. So that's also okay. Our next sentence is kyūryō ga ii shi, ookina kaisha da shi. So there's a noun plus da. Nagaku tsutomeru tsumori desu. The salary is good, it's a big company, and so I intend to work there for a long time. Nagaku. Now take a look at this. Nagai is an e adjective that means long. In this case, long time. But it ends in ku. Now that's because we just turned it into an adverb. That's going to be part of the bonus section, something that just shows up randomly in a little kind of small box at the end of this lesson in Genki 2. They don't make it a full section, but maybe it should be. So I'm making it into a full section at the end of this lesson. Just know that this is an adverb when you change it to ku, e to ku. Nagaku tsutomeru. So tsutomeru means to work at a company, basically. Tsutomeru tsumori desu. I intend to work there for a long time because it's good money. It's a big company. So these are some examples. They're basically the exact same examples, but with separate sentences. Remember how I mentioned that you could have the reasons separate and then just have the she clauses on their own. So for example, tsukiaitai, yasashii shi, kirei da shi. Those are the reasons. They just come after. That's fine. Isogashii, terebi o miteiru shi. I'm busy. I'm watching TV and stuff. So a she in this situation, you could kind of translate in English to mean like, and stuff. Terebi o miteiru shi. I'm watching TV and stuff. Leave me alone. You know, that stuff implies that there's other reasons. I'm doing other stuff. I'm also like eating chips. So I'm too busy to talk to you right now. Sorry, guys. Now here's the exact same sentence from before. Nagaku tsutomeru tsumori desu. Kyūryō ga ii shi. Ookina kaisha da shi. I intend to work there for a long time. The salary's good. It's a big company. Why not? So same exact situation. You're just having the she clauses in a separate sentence. And that's okay. It's not a problem. It's very, very malleable like that. Yasashikatta. Oh, we're using past tense. So I just wanted to point out that you can use other tenses and you can use polite forms. So that's what these examples are showing you. Before it was just present tense, right? So here you've got yasashikatta shi, kirei datta shi, kekkon shimashita. So this is the same kind of example before, but it's all in past tense now, which is also okay. She was kind, pretty, and I married her. Or that's why I married her. 給料がよくありませんし、大きな会社じゃありませんし、長く勤めるつもりではありません. So this is a very polite, although you might not be this forward in a polite conversation, but it's a very polite sentence. Technically, generally speaking, you would use short forms and then 長く勤めるつもりではありません to give the politeness to the sentence. But if you want to be even more polite, you can put polite forms before she, and that's perfectly okay, and it actually sounds very natural. It happens all the time. I've heard it countless times here. So that's perfectly fine. 給料がよくありませんし、大きな会社じゃありませんし、長く勤めるつもりではありません。The salary's not good, it's not a big company, and so, there's the she. I do not intend to work there for a long time. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the conversation for this section. I'll read it once slowly and then at full speed, go over the English. There will be a question, and then I'll get into chat and see what you guys are up to over there. だって、いい天気だし、海がきれいだし、行きましょうよ。いい天気だね。でも、泳げないし、砂が嫌い。楽しいですよ。約束です。わかったわかった。行く。やったー。Full speed. だっていい天気だし、海がきれいだし、行きましょうよ。いい天気だね。でも泳げないし、砂が嫌い。楽しいですよ。約束です。わかったわかった。行く。やったー。Let's go over the English. だっていい天気だし、海がきれいだし、行きましょうよ。So here's our she clauses, right? We've got 'cause. So black and light blue means it's something that doesn't show up in Genki up until this point, or doesn't show up at all. I don't think this one shows up at all. だって、if you watch a lot of anime or read a lot of manga, you probably know this one already. But it just means because. Or it's a slangy because. It's 'cause. だって。だって。 'Cause. Use that at the beginning of the sentence. Sounds really fun. だっていい天気だし。It's nice weather. And 海がきれいだし。And the sea is beautiful. 行きましょうよ。So let's go. いい天気だね。It is nice weather, isn't it? でも、but 泳げないし。I can't swim. So there's a combination of the potential form and し。砂が嫌い. So these are just two reasons of why I don't want to go. Two reasons. I've left out the reason. The reason is implied that I don't want to go. Technically, you could put another she here. So, for example, 泳げないし、砂が嫌いだし、because it's an adjective. So you could do that, but you could also leave it off, because you can drop stuff all over the place in Japanese. And she, the second one, is one of those things that you can drop, especially if you're not going to add the situation after it. 楽しいですよ。約束です。約束 means I promise. I promise. That's a new vocabulary word from lesson 13. わかったわかった。I got it. I got it. I understand. I understand. All right. All right already. 行く。I'll go. やったー。Yatta means many different things. In this situation, it just means yay, but it can also mean I did it. But that doesn't really make sense in this situation unless you want to consider that Yuki is excited that she was able to convince Ando-san to go. In that sense, yes, she did it. There's the furigana for you. And the question for this section is, なんで日本語を習いたいですか? Why do you want to learn Japanese? And I'd like you to give me multiple reasons using she. なんで日本語を習いたいですか? Please give me multiple reasons using she. We're going to be moving on to something else that's quite fun called it looks like. It appears to be some way with そうです. That's our next section. So let's jump into it. To use そうです, you just attach it to something. You just attach it to something. And this is how you do it. You take a verb, you take the mas stem. If you want to learn about the mas stem and you haven't yet, check out lesson 4. No, lesson 3. And you'll learn all about the mas stem. Lesson 4 also covers it a little bit. But I'll put a link up here if I remember. I can't promise that though. Verb mas stem plus そうです. So for example, the mas stem of 食べる to eat is 食べそうです. Okay? E-adjectives, you cut the E and add そうです. So 面白い, you cut the E, 面白そうです. Non-adjectives, you just add そうです on its own. Now, Genki 2 does not cover そうです with verbs. It only covers そうです with adjectives. That's all it covers in Genki 2. So keep that in mind. I'm covering it with verbs because it doesn't ever cover it again in the book. It never covers that you can use そうです with verbs, and it's quite useful. So I wanted to tell you guys about it. You can use it with verbs. And you'll see what I mean when we go into some of the example sentences down here. First, we're going to go with adjectives. So we've got おいしそうです. You're going to hear this one all of the time. おいしそう. You can drop this. 嬉しそうだ. You look happy. Technically, you need だ. Technically, right? I think I wrote that up here. だ in casual conversations. Yeah, in casual conversations, you technically need だ for it to be grammatically correct. 嬉しそうだ, because so, I guess, is technically a noun. But in casual conversation, you generally drop it. So you'll get something like 厳しそう. He looks strict. Technically, it should be kibishisou da. But in conversation, you're probably not going to say the da. You're just going to say kibishisou. In fact, most people don't say da in conversation. It's very masculine. Women will almost never say da, especially at the end of a sentence. So keep it in mind. You're probably going to hear things like oishisou, ureshisou. And if it's in polite conversation, you may have the des, but you can drop it. It's not impolite to drop it. You can also use it with negatives. Now, to say something does not look a certain way, it's a little bit different. You have to first conjugate the adjective into its negative. So, oishii becomes oishikunai. We covered this back in lesson 6, or maybe it was 7. Oishikunai. Now, to use so desu with a negative, you need to cut the e off nai, add sa, and so desu. So, oishiku na sa so desu. It's a little bit complicated, but it's not too bad. You just conjugate it into its negative, cut the e, add sa, so desu. Oishiku na sa so desu. It doesn't look delicious, or it looks not delicious, literally, right? It looks not delicious. Ureshiku na sa so means you don't look happy, but literally it means you look not happy, because the adjective itself has become negative, but that doesn't make sense in English, really. You don't look happy. Kibishisou janai is another way you can say something doesn't look a certain way. So you don't have to do it this way. This is one of the most common ways. Ureshiku nasaso is more common, but you can say kibishisou janai. He doesn't look strict. So you can just put janai after so instead of conjugating the adjective first. Those are both perfectly okay. It's up to you to decide which one you want to use in that situation. There's no real rule for it. They're just two different ways to say the same thing. Kibishisou janai, kibishiku nasaso. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and use it with some verbs down below and a few other words. Kanashisou desu. They look sad. Now here's one with an adjective. Damesou datta ne. It didn't look good, does it? Literally, it looked not good, didn't it? It's a weird English, but this is what you would say. Damesou datta ne. Damesou datta ne. It looked like it was no good. Dame means no good, or like it wasn't possible. Damesou datta ne. You just put so immediately after the na adjective. Damesou. With verbs, we've got ikenasaso. So for negative verbs, you do it the same way you did with negative adjectives. So you conjugate the verb into its negative. This is the negative of the potential form of iku. So iku becomes ikeru, the negative. Cut the ru, add nai, ikenai. Then to make that a negative, as in it looks like it's not, you can't go, you cut the e, add sa, so. For a positive, here's a positive of the potential form of taberu. Tabedaresou desu would also be okay, but in conversation, remember, we often don't use dareru, so taberesou desu is fine. You just cut the da for the ichidan verbs, because potentials become ichidan verbs, remember? Tabedareru becomes tabedaresou, because the ma stem plus so is how you use this. So tabedaresou desu or taberesou desu means it looks like I can eat, or it looks like so-and-so can eat. So for example, tsuketa suika, Pitavnikov was talking about pickled watermelon, wo taberarenasasou desu. It looks like I can't eat pickled suika. I don't think I'd want to try that. Taberenasasou desu. Nasasou desu. So just remember nasaso. If you remember nasaso for negatives, you know how to say looks like you can't do something. Looks like can't. Some longer examples, we've got kono eiga wa kowasou. This movie looks scary. Mitaku nai. Mitaku nai. Kono eiga wa kowasou. Mitaku nai. Ashita wa damesou dakara laishu ni shimashou. So ashita wa damesou da. Tomorrow looks like it's no good. Damesou da. Kara laishu ni shimashou. Let's do next week. Laishu ni shimashou. Yuki ga furisou desu ne. It looks like it will snow, doesn't it? Furisou. So the furu is to fall, for rain or for snow. So you change it to the mas stem. Furimasu, right? Furimasu. So the stem is furi, because you just move up to the e column. Furu, ru, go up to the e. Furisou desu. And you add so desu. This is one of those ones you just have to get used to with practice. It's a little bit complicated. You're going to make mistakes a lot, but just drills really help with so desu. They help a lot. Let's go into the conversation. I'll read it once slowly, and once really fast. Well, at normal speed. わー、きれいな海ですね。暑そう。水は気持ちよさそうですね。Have to cover that one. 冷たそう。でも、波が優しそうだし、泳げそうですね。え、俺なら泳げなさそうだよ。Alright, full speed. わー、きれいな海ですね。暑そう。水は気持ちよさそうですよ。冷たそう。でも、波が優しそうだし、泳げそうですね。え、俺なら泳げなさそうだよ。Let's go into the English really quick. わ、きれいな海ですね。This is just normal sentence. The sea is beautiful, isn't it? 暑そう。It looks hot. 暑そう。Just cut that E and add そう。水は気持ちよさそうですよ。The water looks refreshing is how I translated this. Okay, so this is one that I needed to cover in the conversation here. Remember that the adjective E, good, is actually a conversational version of yoi, the E adjective yoi. Yoi means good in conversation and in general, probably even in dictionaries now, you can find just E on its own, but it comes from yoi, right? E, good, comes from yoi. So when you conjugate it, you need to start from yoi, the true form of E. So kimochi I means feels good. You conjugate the E part. Kimochi yoi is what you're going to actually be conjugating. So you conjugate it by cutting the E and add sa so. Kimochi yo sa so. Okay? So it's a little bit of a weird one. It's kind of an exception. Yo sa so. When you conjugate E, it's going to be yo sa so when using so. Okay? So the water looks good or it looks refreshing. Mizu wa kimochi yo sa so desu yo. Tsumeta so. That's tsumeta. You just cut the E and add so. It looks cold. Demo. Nami ga yasashi so da shi. The waves look forgiving or nice. Oyoge so desu ne. Oyoge so desu ne. So you just cut the ru because oyogemasu is the mas stem. Oyoge is the mas stem. For to swim, oyoge so desu ne. It looks like you can swim. It's a potential form of to swim plus so desu. It looks like you can swim. It, ore nara. This is a grammar point that's coming up next. Ore nara. If it's me we're talking about, oyoge nasa so da yo. So here's the negative. Oyoge nai. Cut the E, add sa. Oyoge nasa so da yo. If it's me we're talking about, doesn't look like I can swim at all. Okay, so let's try to practice with this a little bit, see if we get it. 明日はどんな日になりそうですか? 明日はどんな日になりそうですか? What does tomorrow look like it's gonna what kind of day does it look like it's gonna be? What does tomorrow look like it's gonna turn out to be like? For example, you could say something like 楽しそうな日になりそうです. So can be treated like a na adjective. 楽しそうな日. 楽しそうな日 is something you could say. Or you could just leave that out altogether and just say, 楽しそう. Or 忙しそう would be a fine answer to this. Or つまらなさそう. It looks like it's gonna be a boring day. So you're probably gonna use an adjective here, or maybe you'll say something like 伊勢海老をたくさん食べられそう is another answer you could come up with. It looks like I'm gonna be able to eat lots of lobster. That's what tomorrow's gonna be like. It's something you could say. It's not true. I wish it was true. It's not true. So let's go ahead and jump into try to do something with the te form plus miru. Te miru. All right, so to use the te form with miru, you need the te form. Go back to lesson 7 to check out how to make that. Te plus miru. Now, miru does come from the verb to look, miru, but you do not use the kanji for miru when you make te miru form, right? You don't use the kanji. So don't have a te form of a verb plus the verb miru with the kanji. That's not how you use it. You're going to use the hiragana all the time. And what it means is try to do something, whatever that verb is. So for example, we have tabete miru, which means try to eat. Okay, try to eat. Tabete miru. Tabete miru. You conjugate miru, just like, because it comes from the verb to look, miru, just like the verb miru. So you can conjugate that like an ichidan verb, basically. So tabete miru, try to eat. Tabete mita, tried to eat. Tabete minai, not try to eat. 食べてみます polite, try to eat. 食べてみません polite, not try to eat. 食べてみました polite, tried to eat. So let's go into some full examples. It's straightforward. I'm not going to go too far into this one. そのゲームをやってみたい. You can also conjugate it like a want to try. やってみたい. I want to try that game. Literally, I want to try and do. やって is from yaru, and do that game. We use yaru or suru with games, usually, not asobu like you would in English. 温泉に行ってみましたか? 温泉に行ってみましたか? Did you try and go to an onsen? So for example, when you went to Japan, 日本に行った時、温泉に行ってみましたか? Did you try to go to an onsen? 話してみるね. I'll try and talk to them. This is one you hear quite a bit. 話してみるね. I'm going to try and talk to them. I'll try and talk to them. 話してみるね. Very useful. And that's it. There's not much to it. It's just the te form plus miru. And you conjugate it like the verb miru. You should be able to do both of those things by now. If you can't make the te form and you can't conjugate miru yet, you probably need to go back to lesson 3 and lesson 7 and take a look at those. You just combine those two things and you have the te miru form. And you can say try to do something. So here is our conversation example. 泳いでみましょうよ。泳いでみたくない。私は泳ぎます。どうぞ。ちょっとだけ足を入れてみる。いいですね。もっと入りたくなりますよ。Full speed. 泳いでみましょうよ。泳いでみたくない。私は泳ぎます。どうぞ。ちょっとだけ足を入れてみる。いいですね。もっと入りたくなりますよ。Okay, let's go over that in English. 泳いでみましょうよ。Let's try and swim. So we've got the volitional of 見る、見ましょう。Let's try and swim, man. You can translate that yo as man if you want to. 泳いでみたくない。I don't want to try and swim. So that's the negative of the want to form. たい、見たい、見たくない。I don't want to try and swim. 私は泳ぎます。Easy sentence there. 私は泳ぎます。I'm going to swim. どうぞ。Go right ahead. ちょっとだけ。Just a little. だけ means just or only. It means only, basically. So only a little. ちょっとだけ足を入れてみる. I'm going to try and put my feet in. Now, this next sentence. Take a look at the furigana there for the same exact kanji. いいですね。もっと入りたくなりますよ。入りたくなりますよ。Nice. You'll become want to go in more. It's a weird sentence in English, but this is how you would say it in Japanese. You'll become want to go in more. The reason for this is that 入れて、入れる means to put in, and to go in, 入る. So it's the exact same kanji, different readings, technically different verbs. Put in, go in. 入る 入れる. Those are a little bit hard to figure out in the beginning. Okay, the question for this section is やってみたいことを教えてください。やってみたいことを教えてください. Please tell me something that you would like to try to do. Please tell me something you would like to try to do. The next section is a good one. It's very short in Genki, and it shouldn't be, because it's actually an important point, and there's a lot to cover in it, despite it only being half a page in Genki 2. All right, so let's jump into nara. So for nara, to use nara, it basically means if it's true that something, then. So first we have sentence 1 plus nara plus sentence 2. So if it's true that sentence 1, then it follows that sentence 2. To use this, you need the short form of a verb followed by nara, and then anything in sentence 2. For an e-adjective, you just add nara to the e-adjective. You don't need anything in between it. Sentence 2. Na-adjective is the same. Nouns are the same. You just add nara directly to them. Now, Genki only covers a particular usage of nara, and that is, for example, if someone asks you, do you speak a foreign language? 外国語が話せますか? Then a response could be 日本語なら話せます. So if it's Japanese we're talking about, is what that means, then yes, I can speak it. So that's the only usage of nara that they cover in Genki 2. And then they never talk about it again, which is not good because there's a lot more to it. A lot more to it, I'm sorry to say. The book doesn't cover enough. So the first thing I need to mention is that nara, the conjunction nara, comes from a longer word called naraba. naraba. It's an older word. It's not really used as much except for in very polite Japanese and sometimes in more dramatic things and in writing. Naraba. That's where it comes from. But in modern Japanese, it's mostly used as nara. It can be used, as I put here, with verbs and nouns and stuff, but technically, you're supposed to put no in between all of these things. Do I have that on the next page? Yeah. Technically speaking, it needs no. So verb plus no plus naraba or nara, and then sentence 2. An e-adjective plus no plus nara. And that's because that nominalizes them. It turns them into nouns. Because technically speaking, you can only use nara with nouns. But in modern Japanese, adjectives are treated like nouns and nouns are nouns, so that they can just take nara. In modern Japanese, though, it's just used this way mostly. Verb plus nara, e-adjective plus nara, na-adjective plus nara, noun plus nara, and then the following sentence. The first sentence is supposed to be something that the person speaking believes to be true. They believe that this is a thing that's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. Maybe someone told them that they're going somewhere. Someone said, I'm going to Japan next year. You could use that with a nara expression. Nihon ni iku nara, for example, right? You can use that because someone just told you that it's true, so you believe it to be true. So you're going to, with that in mind, if that's true, then something. You can't use it with things that are like, that never fail to happen. So for example, every single day, it becomes 12 o'clock at some point in the day. So it's always true that at some point in the day, it will become 12 o'clock. So you can't use this with times. 12 nara, something happens. You cannot use nara with that. You need a different construction, which I'm not going to go into today, to mean if with those. Nara can't be used in that situation. You can't use it if you never know something will be true. If it's just a random statement, like 来年の3月にオリンピックがあるなら, like if the Olympics happen next March, like I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if it's true. I don't know anything about it. It's not true. In fact, you can't use nara then. You can't. It must be something you believe to be true when you say it. It's a conditional that is mostly, it's limited in its usage, very limited in its usage. Don't use it just like a normal if. Let's go on to some example sentences to see how to use it. All right, so this is what Genki goes over. This is the only examples that they go over. 英語なら読めます. If it's English we're talking about, I can read it. 英語なら読めます. 日本語なら話せます. If it's Japanese as opposed to other languages, I can speak it. ペルーなら行ってみたい. If it's Peru as opposed to other countries that we're talking about, I want to try and go. That's the only usage that they cover, but there's a lot more. Here we go. 日本に来るならラーメンを食べてみてください. If you're coming to Japan, please try to eat ramen. Now, this sentence would not be okay to just say randomly. Like, I can't just say generally speaking to all of you, 日本に来るならラーメンを食べてみてください. That doesn't work because I don't know if you're coming to Japan. I actually have to know that you specifically are coming to Japan. So if you, whoever you are, tell me, I'm going to Japan next month, then I can use nara because I know it's true you're going to Japan. So I can say, 日本に来るなら, if it's true you're coming to Japan, 日本に来るならラーメンを食べてみてください. If you're coming to Japan, then please try to eat ramen. That's when you can use nara. 安藤さんは映画を見に行きたいのなら, I'm using no here just for fun, 僕も見に行きたい. Okay, so this is interesting. 安藤さんは映画に見に行きたい. If it's true that Ando-san wants to go watch a movie, so what might have happened here is someone just told me that Ando-san wants to go watch a movie, or I'm talking to Ando-san and I'm using his name while we're talking. Ando-san just said, I want to go watch a movie. 映画を見に行きたい. Then I can use this. Then I can use nara because I know it to be true. The person just told me. Ando-sanは映画を見に行きたいのなら. If it's true, 僕も見に行きたい. I also want to go. 暑いなら行きません. If it's hot, I won't go. Now, this wouldn't work if I didn't know that it was hot at the place. Someone just told me the beach is really hot today. じゃあ暑いなら行きません. And that brings us to the conversation. ほら入りたくなると言いましたよ。まあな。ちょっと気持ちいい。腰まで入れましたね。もう少し深いところまで行きましょう。深いところならやだ。少しだけですよ。ちょっとだけなら行ってみる。Full speed. ほら、入りたくなると言いましたよ。 まあな、ちょっと気持ちいい。腰まで入れましたね。もう少し深いところまで行きましょう。深いところなら嫌だ。少しだけですよ。ふーん。ちょっとだけなら行ってみる。Okay, let's go over the English. ほら。This isn't covered in Genki, so it's black and light blue. And it means, see? I told you. Or, look, I told you. It basically means I told you so. ほら。入りたくなると言いましたよ。I said you'd want to get in. まあな。ちょっと気持ちいい。Yeah, well, it kind of feels good. 腰まで入れましたね。You were able to get in up to your waist, eh? Okay, this word isn't in either Genki book. And I don't know why, because you will hear it all the time. And it means waist or lower back. Now, Japanese people say all the time, koshite. Japanese people's lower backs are constantly in pain, all the time. I kind of believe them too, and it's probably because they grew up sitting on the floor all the time. But every Japanese person I've always ever known, their lower back always hurts. And the word for that is koshi. So it should show up in the book because you're going to hear it all the time. Koshi, lower back or waist. It's also waist. So getting into the water up to your waist would also be koshi. It also showed up in every single book I've read so far this year. At least 10 times each book. So it's an important word. もう少し深いところまで行きましょう。深い also doesn't show up in the book. It's fairly important. It means deep. Let's go to a slightly deeper spot. もう少し深いところまで行きましょう。深いところなら So I know it's true. I know that it's deeper. It's deep because the person just told me. もう少し深いところまで行きましょう。So if it's true that it's deeper, the spot is deeper. 深いところならやだ。I don't want to. やだ means I don't want to or I hate that or no. It also means no. It's a good word. やだ。少しだけですよ。Just a little or only a little. ちょっとだけなら言ってみる。If it's true that it's just a little or only a little, 言ってみる。I'll try and go. 言ってみる。So the question for this section is, 僕はあなたの国に行きます。I'm going to your country. I am. 僕はあなたの国に行きます。Little role play here. 何をした方がいいですか? What should I do there? So your response to this will be, it should be your country name. Country に来るのなら何々をした方がいいですよ. So please put your country name and the thing that I should do here. For example, 日本に来るならラーメンを食べた方がいいですよ. So you can replace this した with whatever verb it is for the thing that I'm supposed to do. So ラーメンを食べた方がいいですよ. Okay? So that's how I want you to answer the question. 僕はあなたの国に行きます。何をした方がいいですか? So this section is frequency in Japanese. The next section after this is the bonus section about turning adjectives into adverbs. So let's go ahead and jump into frequency in Japanese. Frequency is sort of expressed like this. You take a period of time with the ni particle and then add the frequency. The frequency can be number of times, number of hours, number of days, number of months, number of weeks, whatever. Doesn't matter. But basically you get a number plus nichi, unless it's 2, 3, 4, then it becomes 2日、3日、4日. Lesson 13 covers all of those. Those are different readings of days. So day 1 is 1日, 2 days is 2日. It's also the second of the month. 3日is 3 days. It's also the third of the month. 4日 4. 5日 is 5, etc., etc. So you have to go over the vocabulary in the book for that, or if you're on the Patreon, it's in the vocabulary videos. Please check out the Patreon if you get a chance. I haven't pushed an ad for that at all this entire lesson, but so yeah, you take the day, the number of days, ni, number of times, or number of hours if it's 1 hour. If it's 1 day, for example, 1日に1回. So in 1 day, I do 1 time. Or number of weeks. Number plus 週間. Number of weeks ni, how many times, how many days. Number of ヶ月に how many times, how many days. In a number of years. 1年に何回 or how many days. It's kind of weird looking at it that way. It's much easier with examples. So we've got 1日に1時間読みます. I read 1 hour per day. 1日に1時間読みます. You don't need a particle after that, by the way. Just keep that in mind. 3日に1時間読みます. I read 1 hour every 3 days. 3日に1時間読みます. 1ヶ月に2日くらい食べに行きます. I go out to eat about 2 days per month. So 1ヶ月 2ヶ月、3ヶ月. You basically just use the 1, 2, 3, 4, but for 1, before cause, generally, chi turns into a small tsu. 1ヶ月に2日くらい食べに行きます。I go out to eat about 2 days per month. 1年に1回ハワイに行きます。That's a lie. I wish it was true. 1年に1回ハワイに行きます。So in 1 year, I go to Hawaii once. One time. That's frequency. That's just the construction. Just number, the period of time. に the number of times, the number of days, the number of hours, whatever. 2ヶ月後 2 months later. 最近何していますか？最近 ?1 週間に3回くらい海に泳ぎに行っている。え？そうですか？まあ、楽しいし。でしょ？ Let's go over full speed. 最近何していますか？最近1週間に3回くらい海に泳ぎに行っています。行っている。え、そうですか？まあ、楽しいし。でしょ？ Let's go over the English for that. 最近何していますか？ What have you been up to recently? 最近 recently? 1週間に3回くらい about 3 times per week 海に泳ぎに行っている I'm going swimming at the sea え、そうですか？え、really? そうですか means really? まあ、楽しいし There's our she from earlier. It's fun and stuff. That's a very common way to end a sentence. It's just an adjective plus she. Dot, 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 dot. I use it all the time. まあ、楽しいし Well, it's fun and stuff. There's other reasons, but it's fun and stuff. でしょ? That's a good word to end with. Just means right? I told you so. Basically, it's another I told you so. Right? でしょ? Please give that a shot. The final question before the bonus section is どのぐらい食べに行きますか? About how often do you go out to eat? So for example, for us, maybe it would be 2週間に1回ぐらい食べに行きます. Our last and final section is bonus. So the bonus is turning adjectives into adverbs. So to turn adjectives into adverbs, it's a very useful thing to be able to do. All you need to do is take an E adjective, cut the E. Oh, there it is. Cut the E, add ku, and then you have a verb because obviously adverbs, they modify verbs. For not adjectives, you just add ni and then the verb. So for example, kibishi, strict, becomes kibishiku plus a verb to do something in a strict manner. Shiawase, which means long-lasting happiness, to do something, turn it into an adverb. Shiawase ni plus the verb. Now it's an adverb. So some other examples are karaku tsukurimashita. Kuraku tsukurimashita. This means I made it spicy. Karaku tsukurimashita. Karai is the adjective for spicy, so you cut the E, add ku instead, or turn the E into a ku if you prefer to think of it that way. Karaku tsukurimashita. I made it spicy. Tanoshiku asondeiru. They are having fun playing. Literally, they are playing fun. Jouzu ni dekimashita. You're going to hear this one a lot. This is a very common way to praise kids when they finish something. They've done their homework well, or they made, not even just kids. You can say this to anyone. Jouzu ni dekimashita. You did it a good job, or you were able to do it skillfully is what it literally means, but you did a good job is probably the best translation of it, but jouzu ni dekimashita. That's the end of lesson 13. We finished our first lesson of Genki 2. Good job, guys. I'll just throw up a quick little plug for the Patreon. On the Patreon, we have textbook practice videos so that you can do the textbook practice at the end of each lesson in the book. It's made for partners, basically, or for a classroom environment. And a lot of you are studying on your own. So what we did is we became your partners in the textbook practice videos on the Patreon so that you have someone to do those exercises with in video format. We've also got vocabulary videos where you can get to shadow and repeat after Yuki's native pronunciation. And I tell you what they mean, and I go on rants about what I think those words are good for, or if I think Genki treats them in a poor manner, whatever, rants. And then there's the listening and shadowing videos, which you can shadow Yuki and myself as we have conversations. You shadow us. Shadowing helps you get faster at Japanese. I've heard a lot of people have actually come back to me and told me that using the shadowing videos have helped them improve their speed and fluency in speaking Japanese a lot better. And actually someone's native Japanese teacher just recommended the shadowing videos from my Patreon to their student, and that student became a patron. So thank you so much, whoever recommended them. I really, really appreciate that. That's the plug. What we have right here is thumbs up を攻撃してください. Please smash, attack that like button. チャンネル登録お願いします. Also hit the bell if you haven't already so that you get notifications when we go live with these streams. There will be a live stream every other week for a new lesson. Next week will be the practice live stream for lesson 13. So we will come back and we will practice what we learned this week together more and just sort of have a more relaxed stream.
ありがとうございます。
お疲れ様でした。
また次のビデオで会いましょうね。